The best PvP perks for the Greatsword in New World is Forting Strikes, Keenly Empowered and Attunement. If you're a Dex player, you can replace Forting Strikes with Transient Strikes. And also, if you can't craft the Greatsword with Attunement, you can go for one of the chain perks. Now I have to explain to you why these perks are important, so that you can utilize the Greatsword to its max potential. Let's start off with why the Keenly Empowered perk is important on the Greatsword. If you didn't know, Keenly Empowered empowers you or increases your damage whenever you do a crit for a few seconds. And the Greatsword has a lot of crits, since it gets a guaranteed crit whenever it goes into Onslaughter, plus it gets a critical hit chance increase by 10% whenever there's a debuff on a target. So the Greatsword has a lot of critical chance. And this is why Keenly Empowered is so strong on the Greatsword. But there might be a downfall for using Keenly Empowered, since it's really easy to hit the Empowered cap with the Greatsword. Because there's two passive abilities that actually gives you Empower on the Greatsword, which is Stab and Strike, which gives you a 10% Empowered. And there's also an ability from the Relentless Rush tree called Relentless Rush Power that also gives you Empower. So it might be easy to hit the Empowered cap on the Greatsword. Also in the Defiance tree there's a passive ability called Blade Honing, which also gives you a 3% damage increase for each buff on you, up to 4 buffs. So it is basically up to a 12% Empower increase if you have 4 buffs on you while using the Greatsword. So this might even count to the Empowered cap as well. Now saying all of this, let's actually calculate the amount of Empower we get from using the Greatsword, also including the attribute points plus using a slash ring, since slash damage also counts towards the Empowered cap. So to calculate the Empowered cap, we're going to include the Honing Stone, which is 7%, the slash ring, which is 4.9%, the 100 attribute strength point, which is increasing your slash damage by 5%, the Keenly Empowered, which is 15%, and the passive ability called Stab and Strike, which is 10%, the Relentless Power passive ability with 10% Empower increase, and Blade and Honing will increase your damage by 12%. I'm not sure about Blade and Honing, but let's include it into the Empowered cap. Now if we calculate all of this together, we're going to get 63.9% Empower just from the Greatsword, which is over the 50% Empowered cap. But this doesn't mean that Keenly Empowered is useless on the Greatsword, since you will have to do a lot of things to hit the Empowered cap, and you won't always be at the Empowered cap. It just means that if you maximize your damage, you're going to lose some damage since you hit the Empowered cap. There's a lot of empowers that I just said. What I basically said is that you're going to have to use a Honing Stone, you're going to have to dodge, you're going to have to use Relentless Rush, plus the stars need to align with your build to hit the Empowered cap. If there was any other better perk than Keenly Empowered, I would have included it on the Greatsword, but this is the best perk for the Greatsword, since there's no other better perk that can replace Keenly Empowered. If you have a suggestion on what can be replaced with Keenly Empowered, let me know in the comments. So now you understand how Keenly Empower influence the Greatsword, and you know that you get guaranteed crits from going into Onslaughter stance, and you have such a high crit chance with the Greatsword. Now let's move on to Forting Strikes and Transient Strikes. So why is Transient Strikes good? Well, basically you do a lot of heavy attacks with your Greatsword, and Transient Strikes increases your damage whenever you heavy attack, so that is why Transient Strikes is good. I'm not gonna drag it out, this is obvious that you use a lot of heavy attacks on the Greatsword. But why do I consider Forting Strikes better than Transient Strikes? Well, when you have 300 strength, you gain grit on your auto attacks, might it be light or heavy. But why I say Forting Strikes is better than Transient Strike is because the tracking on the light attacks. Whenever you do light attacks on a Greatsword, it has really amazing tracking. It's probably the best tracking in the game. So in PvP, you're going to utilize light attacks to track your opponent, and you're not going to use heavy attacks to really track your opponent. So you have a lot of chase potential just with your light attacks. And you're going to utilize light and heavy attacks whenever you utilize the Greatsword. You're not just going to spam heavy attacks, since it's so easy to dodge and it's predictable. So you're going to weave in light attacks and heavy attacks. Also, I made a video on the best DPS combo with the Greatsword, and in that combo you also utilize light attacks. So I know that Forwarding Strikes is going to be the best perk for the Greatsword. But if you're a Dex user, you're obviously going to go for Transcend Strikes, since you don't use strength on the Greatsword, or you're probably not going to hit that 300 strength mark on the Greatsword. Again, I know a lot of people think that Transcend Strikes is going to be better, but I believe Forwarding Strikes is the way to go, if you're not a dexterity user. And the last best in slot perk for the Greatsword is either going to be one of the attunement perks or one of the chain perks. Basically, the attunement perks will give you more damage, and the chain perks will give you more damage plus charge your heart rune faster. So, if you're going to roll a Greatsword, it's probably easier to roll for one of the chain perks, since there are so many chain perks that you can roll on the Greatsword. But if you're going to force an attunement perk, it's going to take up a slot of your crafting whenever you craft with a golden scarab, so your chances of rolling a Greatsword with an attunement perk plus one of the other two perks is a little bit less, since you will have to get lucky. So let's actually calculate which is the best Greatsword to roll. Is it a chain Greatsword or an attunement Greatsword? To calculate which Greatsword is better to roll or will actually be cheaper to roll, we can go to a website called Eternum Craft, and we can select our perks by going to this website. So we just select our perks on the Greatsword, which is Forwarding Strikes, Keenly Empowered and Chain. Let's see how many crafts we will need to craft a best in slot Greatsword. If we craft with a golden scarab, it will take us 46 tries if we force Forwarding Strikes and Keenly Empowered on the Greatsword, and we will get one of the chain perks. So 46 tries to maybe get a best in slot Greatsword if we go with a chain perk on the Greatsword. Now let's force the attunement perk and see how many Greatswords we will have to craft with one of the attunement perks. If you want a Greatsword with Forwarding Strikes, Keenly Empowered and an attunement perk, you will have to craft over 200 Greatswords. I would say if you want to craft a Greatsword and roll for best in slot Greatsword, go for one of the chain perks on the Greatsword, or else you will spend a fortune just to get a maybe best in slot. Since this also relies on RNG and you might not get lucky, you might never get the Greatsword that you want. But if you're happy with a 2-perker, go with Forwarding Strikes and Keenly Empowered. That is going to be a good Greatsword. If you want to know the best Greatsword combo to maximize your damage, go and watch this video.